Mayday! Mayday! This is Scout Sergeant Phineas to any Imperial vessel within Vox range.
This is Intercessor Sergeant Cyprian of the Ultramarines. Go ahead, Sergeant Phineas.
Sergeant Cyprian? Oh, thank the Emperor! My team has acquired critical information, but it's no longer safe for us to remain on board the Wrath of Terra. We've commandeered an escape craft and are evacuating to the Space Hulk Galodork. Request immediate...
Negative, Sergeant Phineas. Do not board the Galodork. That Space Hulk has not been secured.
I'm afraid we have no choice. Request immediate extra...
This is Chief Master-at-Arms Halius to Ultramarine vessel. Stand down. Repeat, stand down. This is an Imperial Navy matter. Any interference will be met with lethal force.
Is that meant to be a threat, Chief?
I say again, do not interfere. You have been warned. I'm Warboss Bogo. My mission for the Great War is to study the tactics of our enemies, to note their strengths and identify their weaknesses. But I never expected to find Ultramarine Intercessors fighting against members of the Imperial Navy. Still, strange things happen inside Space Hulks, and I suppose this isn't the strangest. The 4 scouts fleeing from the Wrath of Terra didn't have a chance against the pursuing Navy Breachers, and their remains now lie strewn all about this section of the Galodork. One of these mutilated corpses has the critical information the doomed scouts report having acquired. It's now up to the Ultramarines to recover it, but the Navy Breachers will do whatever it takes to prevent that from happening. The Ultramarine Intercessors are led by Sergeant Cyprian, an Intercessor Sergeant with a power weapon, a bolt rifle, and an Auspex scan. They also got an Intercessor Gunner with a variety of grenades. There's a Doomguy Marine with Reclusium-blessed bolts and a Vengeance-class scope. 2 Intercessors with bolt rifles and combat blades, and a regular Intercessor with a bolt rifle. The Navy Breachers are led by Chief Halius, who has a bolt pistol and a power weapon. They got an Endurant, a Grenadier, a Plasma Gunner, a Melter Gunner, an Axejack, a Surveyor, a Hatch Cutter, and 4 Navy Armsmen. And all but the Endurant and the Surveyor have got stims, making them more resistant to pain. Before their untimely demise, the scouts placed barricades, as did the Navy Breachers, expecting the Ultramarines' attack. Upon their arrival at the Galodork, the Ultramarines fan out into the docking area, not knowing where the Navy Breachers might be hiding. But the clanking of void armor boots soon makes the Breachers' presence known. Assessing the situation, the Intercessor Sergeant stands ready to change an order if necessary, while the Navy Endurant rushes forward to perform some recon. The Ultramarines employ their Devastator doctrine, while the Navy Chief issues an attack order. The Chief then announces his intention to secure the center of this section of the Galodork, while the Ultramarines keep their tactical objectives secret. Claiming the initiative, an Ultramarine traverses some crates, then rushes forward and goes on guard. The hatch cutter and an armsman then perform a breach and clear, and the hatch cutter gains some additional motivation. The armsman then opens a hatch and moves into the chamber, taking cover behind a barricade. While the hatch cutter moves and dashes forward, then uses his torch to weld shut the nearby hatch, remaining concealed. But the Ultramarine Sergeant moves to that same hatch, and in defiance of the weld, uses his power weapon to slash it open. The Surveyor then moves and wayfinds for the Plasma Gunner. An Ultramarine then moves to a hatch, opens it, and dashes behind cover, receiving an order from his sergeant to change from engage to conceal. The Navy Melter Gunner then moves and dashes. An Ultramarine then opens a hatch, then moves and dashes to support his sergeant. The Axejack then moves and dashes close to the hatch cutter. The Marine Gunner then moves to a hatch and goes on guard. The Navy Plasma Gunner then moves and dashes behind a barricade, where he's immediately shot at by the Intercessor Gunner that was on guard. Forcing him to use a lot of luck to avoid dying or becoming seriously injured. The Plasma Gunner then supercharges his weapon and fires back. But despite the Chief's attack order, he completely misses the Ultramarine Gunner, instead striking the bulkhead behind which the gunner is hiding. An Ultramarine then moves behind cover. The Endurant then moves and dashes next to the Plasma Gunner. Prompting the Intercessor Gunner to fire Overwatch at the Plasma Gunner. Easily killing him with a mass reactive bolter round. The Navy Grenadier then moves and dashes. A Navy Armsman moves and dashes around a corner, while his friend steps to the side and opens a hatch. Another Navy armsman and the chief then conceal themselves behind cover in a passageway. At the end of the first turning point of this battle, the Navy Breachers score 1 victory point for central control, but the Ultramarine Intercessors reveal that one of their tactical objectives is execution, and they add this successful round to their execution tally. At the start of the second turning point, the Ultramarines claim the initiative. The Ultramarines again apply their Devastator doctrine, and the Navy chief issues another attack order, then orders his men to brace for counterattack. And neither kill team reveals any more of their tactical objectives. The Intercessor Sergeant slashes ferociously at the hatch cutter with his power sword, but the hatch cutter proves to be a more skilled combatant than the sergeant expected. After suffering a minor wound, the hatch cutter drives his chain fist through the sergeant's ceramite, finishing him. Declaring a breach and clear, the Navy Grenadier rushes forward and lobs a crack grenade over the barricade, blowing a big hole in the Space Marine's armor. Then, finishing the breach and clear, the Navy melter gunner rushes forward and fires a deadly shot. Melting the hapless Space Marine, armor and all. An Ultramarine moves close enough to see the hatch cutter, but is careful to stay out of range of his chain fist. He then blasts the hatch cutter with his bolt rifle. Wounding him. The Marine then blasts again, but the poorly placed bolt bounces off void armor. The wounded hatch cutter then charges the Marine, but the fight doesn't go his way. An Ultramarine then barges through a hatch into the central chamber, blasting a Navy armsman for a minor wound. The Endurant then hops a barricade and moves to protect the melter gunner. He then fires his shotgun at long range, causing an almost insignificant wound to the Intercessor gunner. The Doomguy Marine then moves up and searches one of the mutilated corpses for the intelligence, but finds nothing. A Navy armsman shoots at a nearby Marine, barely punching through his ceramite. The armsman then charges out a hatch to engage a different Space Marine. Another armsman then moves to a hatch and opens it. The Intercessor gunner then fires a frag grenade at the Endurant, failing to injure him, but causing minor injuries to the Melter gunner and the Grenadier. Using bolter discipline, the gunner then fires his bolt rifle at the Endurant, seriously injuring him. The Surveyor rushes into the central chamber, takes cover, and blasts one of the Marines for another minor injury. The Intercessor gunner then fires Overwatch at the Endurant, nearly killing him. The brave chief then charges the Doom Guy Marine, slashing him with his power sword, but the Doom Guy responds, parrying the next attack, and then pummeling the chief with his armored fists. An Intercessor then fires Overwatch at an armsman, but hits only a pillar and void armor. An armsman then charges in to help his chief fight the Doom Guy Marine. But he only manages to parry one of the Marine's attacks before taking an armored fist to the face. Another armsman then moves and dashes around a corner, concealing himself behind a hatchway. The Axe-Jack then charges one of the knife-wielding Space Marines. Both combatants fight expertly, parrying each other's blows, and landing hits for serious wounds. The Doom Guy Marine then calls upon his Angels of Death tactical ploy to launch an unexpected attack against the Navy Chief, but he fumbles his attack, and the Chief strikes back, killing him. At the end of turning point 2, the Navy Breachers score one more victory point for central control, and the Ultramarines don't add anything to their execution tally because they only killed one Breacher, and the Breachers killed 3 Marines. At the beginning of turning point 3, the Navy Breachers seize the initiative. The Chief issues an attack order in the central chamber, while the Ultramarines again employ their Devastator doctrine. The Chief then issues the order to brace for counterattack, and neither side declares any more tactical objectives. Without hesitation, the critically injured Chief orders a breach and clear, charges into the central chamber, and attacks the Space Marine from behind. Dispatching him with a single critical slash from his power sword. Finishing the breach and clear, an armsman moves and dashes into the docking area, concealing himself behind some crates. An Intercessor falls back out of combat, takes cover behind some equipment, and then blasts at a Navy armsman. blowing him to pieces. The melter gunner then moves forward and fires his weapon, but most of its extreme heat is absorbed by the Space Hulk's bulkhead. The Space Marine then fires back. Grazing the melter gunner for a minor wound. He then fires a crack grenade at the wounded Endurant, easily putting him out of his misery. The Grenadier rushes forward and lobs a crack grenade at the Intercessor gunner, but causes only minimal damage. The Marine gunner then fires a crack grenade at the melter gunner, reducing him to nothing but ash. Two armsmen then move and dash to a docking area hatch. The Axe-Jack moves toward the docking area, and the Surveyor also moves toward the docking area and conceals himself. At the end of the third turning point, neither team scores any additional victory points, but the Ultramarines add one more turning point to their execution tally for scoring more kills than they suffered losses. At the start of the final turning point, the Navy Breachers claim the initiative. The Chief issues an attack order in the docking area. The Ultramarines employ their tactical doctrine, and the Chief orders his men to again brace for counterattack. And neither team discloses any more tactical objectives. The Navy Grenadier lobs a crack grenade, finally finishing off the Ultramarine gunner. The Grenadier then moves into a corner. Driven by vengeance, the last remaining Ultramarine charges the Navy Grenadier. The Marine parries the Grenadier's hatchet, then drives his combat knife home. No longer worried about the Ultramarines, the Axe-Jack and the Surveyor rush into the enemy drop zone. A Navy armsman then unfurls the banner of the Wrath of Terra and plants it firmly in the docking area, marking a resounding victory for the Navy Breachers. In the end, because the Ultramarines scored more kills than they suffered losses in 2 of the 4 turning points, they score 1 victory point from execution, but they score no victory points for Headhunter or Shock and Awe. Nonetheless, because they showed up in such nice uniforms, they score an extra 2 victory points, increasing their total victory points to 3. The Navy Breachers score 2 more victory points for planting their banner in the docking area, and another 2 victory points for Into the Breach. And because they also showed up in nice uniforms, the Navy Breachers score 2 more victory points. Finally, because the Ultramarines never even found the critical information, let alone retrieve it, the Navy Breachers score another 12 victory points, bringing their total to 20. So, while the last surviving Ultramarine skulks off to hide in a different section of the Gallowdark, the surviving Navy Breachers report a decisive victory to the Wrath of Terra.
Captain, the Ultramarines have been routed. We've recovered all items from the scouts and have secured the docking area.
Excellent, Chief. I knew I could count on you.
If I may ask, sir, why were the Ultramarines opposing us?
Don't trust your senses, Chief. Often the taint of chaos hides behind the most trusted of faces.
Understood, sir.
Yes. Even behind the most trusted of faces.